The world was alive. The oceans were no longer silent. Gigantic creatures moved through the depths. The heavens were filled with the flight of the first birds. The earth had been filled with movement. Creation already breathed beauty, power, order. But something was still missing. There was an emptiness that even the seas could not fill. A silence over the dry land that had not yet been broken. No animal ran across the fields. No creature walked among the trees. No living being inhabited the surface of the earth. Everything seemed prepared, as if creation itself was waiting for something greater, because the most important moment since the beginning of the world had not yet arrived. The heavens already shone. The seas were already full of life. The mountains stood firm. The rivers flowed across the newly formed earth. The forests already covered the world with their beauty, but the dry land still remained in expectation, like a stage set and ready, waiting for the next command of the Creator. Then, on the sixth day, God spoke once again, and what would happen in that moment would forever change the history of creation. The land would no longer remain empty. New creatures would rise upon its surface. Beings would run across the fields. Animals would inhabit mountains, forests, and valleys. But even that would not be the greatest event of that day, because on that same day, the Creator himself would do something he had never done before. Something different from everything that had already been created. Something that would carry his mark. Something that would walk upon the earth and change the history of the world forever. The sixth day had begun, and creation was about to reach its most extraordinary moment. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds." And in that instant, the silence of the dry land came to an end. What had until then remained still began to fill with life. The fields were no longer empty. The forests were no longer just trees moving in the wind. The mountains would no longer remain lonely. The earth, which had waited through all that time, finally received creatures to inhabit it. Across the plains, animals of every kind began to appear. Strong and majestic creatures ran across the newly formed fields. Small beings moved through the grass. Animals emerged within the dense forests. Others climbed the mountains. Others moved silently across the ground. Life was no longer only in the seas, nor only in the heavens. Now the very earth pulsed with movement. The sound of footsteps echoed across the fields. The forests filled with creatures. The valleys came alive. The mountains became home to beings prepared by the Creator. Every animal had its form. Every creature had its purpose. Nothing appeared by chance. Nothing existed without order. Everything obeyed the word of God. Great animals walked upon the earth with strength and majesty. Smaller creatures filled the spaces between the vegetation. Crawling beings crossed the newly formed ground. The surface of the earth, once silent, was now completely alive. It was as if all creation had reached a new level of fullness. The seas were full. The heavens were alive. The earth was now inhabited. Everything seemed complete. Everything seemed perfect. But it was not. Because among all those creatures, there was still no one capable of beholding creation itself. No being looked into the heavens and understood their greatness. No animal could recognize the Creator. No creature carried what was still to come. And then, in the middle of a world already filled with life, the Creator spoke words that had never been spoken before. Words unlike any that had come before. Words that would forever change the history of existence. Until that moment, all creation had come into existence by the simple command of God. Let there be light. And there was light. Let the dry land appear. And the earth emerged. Let the waters abound with living creatures. And the seas were filled with life. Everything happened by the absolute power of the Creator's word. But now, Something different was about to happen, in the middle of a universe already formed, on an earth now full of life. God would speak words that had never been spoken before. This was not simply another command. This was not simply another creature taking its place within creation. What was about to happen would be the climax of everything prepared since the beginning. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness." And in that instant, the entire story of creation reached a new level. Because for the very first time, the Creator was not simply bringing forth a being to inhabit the earth. He was bringing into existence a creation unlike any other. The animals had received life. The birds had received the heavens. The fish had received the seas. But now, something was about to appear that no other creature possessed. The image of the Creator Himself. No animal had received this. No bird of the heavens. No creature of the deep. All creation was the work of God. But now, something extraordinary was about to rise within it. A being capable of beholding the world, capable of recognizing beauty, capable of thinking, choosing, creating, ruling. A being who would walk upon the earth and carry a mark unlike anything else in creation. Man would not simply be another creature among many. He would be different, set apart, distinct, prepared for a place no other being could occupy. The heavens seemed to witness that moment. The earth, already full of life, was about to receive its most extraordinary creation, because what God would do now would never again be repeated in all the history of the world. Then it happened. In the midst of an earth already filled with life, the Creator turned His attention to something unlike anything that had ever existed. It did not rise from the waters. It did not appear running across the fields. It did not descend from the heavens with wings. This time, God Himself would form His most extraordinary creation. From the dust of the earth, the Creator began to form man. The same ground that covered the world now became matter in the hands of God. This was not simply the appearance of another creature. This was an act unlike any other. Personal, intentional, sacred. Every detail was prepared by the Creator Himself. The form of man took shape. Arms, hands, a face, eyes still closed, a perfect body, but still without life. The whole world seemed silent in that moment. The winds seemed to stand still. Creation itself appeared to witness something that had never happened before. The seas still moved. The birds still crossed the heavens. The animals still inhabited the earth. But in that moment, all of creation seemed to converge upon that single instant. Then, God leaned over the man and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And in that instant, everything changed. His chest filled for the very first time. The silence was broken by a first breath. His eyes opened. The first man beheld creation. For the very first time, a human being stood alive upon the earth. Adam had awakened. Not like the animals, not like the birds, not like the creatures of the waters, but as one who carried within himself the breath of life given by God Himself. He looked toward the heavens. He saw the light of the sun upon the earth. He felt the wind touch his face. He stood upon the newly created world. Before him were rivers, mountains, forests, fields, all creation prepared before his arrival. The universe was no longer simply alive. Now there was someone capable of beholding it, someone capable of recognizing its beauty, someone capable of walking before the Creator Himself. In that moment, humanity had entered the story, and the world would never be the same again. But man had not been created simply to exist. He was not upon the earth by chance. From the very beginning, there was a purpose for his existence. Then God blessed man and gave him a mission that no other creature had ever received. Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." And in that instant, something extraordinary was established within creation. Man would not simply be another inhabitant of the world. He would receive authority, responsibility, dominion. The whole earth now stood before him. The seas, the heavens, the fields, the forests, the rivers and mountains. Everything had been prepared before his arrival. All creation had now become the setting for his mission. The animals inhabited the earth, but none of them had received this place. The birds crossed the heavens, but none of them carried this purpose. Only man, the one formed by God himself, and now walking upon the earth carrying his image. This was not merely life, it was purpose. This was not merely existence, it was mission. Man had been placed within a perfect creation, to rule it under the authority of the Creator. Everything seemed complete. The heavens shone in their glory. The seas were full of life. The earth was inhabited. The animals moved across the fields. And now, man walked upon the newly created world. The work of creation had reached its climax. But something was still to come. Because though man now stood upon the earth, his story was only beginning. A garden would be prepared. A companion would still be created. And within that perfection, humanity would live its first days before God. But in that moment, the sixth day was drawing to its close. And so, the sixth day came to an end. The earth was no longer an empty world. The seas were filled with creatures. The heavens were alive with the flight of birds. The fields were filled with animals. And now, man walked upon creation. Everything had been formed in perfect order. Everything had been prepared by the word of the Creator. From the light to the heavens, from the seas to humanity itself. Nothing was out of place. Nothing existed without purpose. Creation was now complete. The universe that had once been empty now overflowed with life. But the most important moment of that day was not simply the appearance of man. It was the beginning of the story of humanity. The story of every generation, every kingdom, every civilization, every life that would one day walk upon the earth. It all began there, with the first man opening his eyes before a perfect world. And the Bible declares, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." Because for the very first time, creation was complete, but the story was only beginning. Because in the next moment of creation, a garden would be revealed, a woman would be formed, and humanity would take its first steps before the Creator. If you want to continue this journey through the story of the world according to the Bible, from Genesis to the end of times, follow the next episodes, because the events that would forever change the destiny of mankind were still yet to come.